Hey there, fisionados. Kevin here from N.O.A.H, Northern Ontario Aquarium Hobby, welcoming you to another installment of
Foundations in Aquascaping.
Sorry, every time. Anyways, yes, Foundations in Aquascaping. Welcome back. Today I am going to be covering trimming your plants. Not specifically in terms of propagation, how to make more plants, but really just the best ways to go about doing it. Propagation does play into it, especially when it comes to stem plants, but just some basic knowledge for those of you, you've started growing your plants and they're taking off, and you might see photos of people's tanks or videos of people's tanks, with these really nice dense bushes, and you've got your fertilizers going, you've got your CO2, maybe or maybe not, depending if you're doing low tech or high tech. You've got your lighting all dialed in, and you're just not getting that dense bush look. Why? You've got your carpet plants planted, but it's just not filling in. Why? Trimming. All comes down to trimming. Also, your tank is overgrowing and turning into a jungle, and you don't want that. You want something a little bit more manicured. Trimming. So I'm going to talk about just some of the basic techniques used in trimming those plants to make your aquarium look its best, and to give that nice dense look, and to let your carpet plants carpet in. Keep your tank growth under control. I guess, I said sort of in my intro there that propagation really wasn't the point of this, but you can't really necessarily be trimming your plants without them propagating, unless you're just cutting and tossing here or there. But even if you're doing that, that still does promote some sort of propagation. Propagation meaning more plants grows from the stuff you have. There are just a few basic sort of plants that we use in the hobby, and I'm going to cover just some of the basics. Some of them are outliers that fall beyond this, but these are the basic ones that we're going to use. I've got the whiteboard behind me, no tank today. It's back there behind the whiteboard, but at least for the sake of it, I'm going to use my trusty dry erase markers and play teacher here for a little bit. So again, basically the types of plants that I'm going to be talking about, we've got our stem plants, pretty much got your stem plants. Easy enough to define. Stem plant is a plant that's growing up on the stem. Typically these are going to be your background plants, simply because they tend to grow high and they grow fast in most cases, as long as all of your other parameters are set up, of course. So you got your stem plants as the main type, so that's going to be your Ludwigia, your Rotalas, Bacopa, anything pretty much that you can see stem, Alternate Terra Reinecki, let's say. Tons of different versions of stem plants, but that's the basic of it. It's got a stem. Along with your stem plants, you'll have rosettes. Rosettes, typically, you're going to be thinking something along the lines of your sword plants, just for a basic example. Something that starts off with one main root base, and the stems are all coming out, or the leaves are all coming out from that one central point. Now, typically the reason these are called rosettes is because from a top-down view, if you're actually looking at the way these are growing out, they are growing sort of out in a circular pattern, much like a rose would, the rose petals, the way they sort of spiral out and overlap. Next sort of set of plants that we typically have would be your carpeting plants. So your HC Cuba, your Monte Carlo, your dwarf hairgrass, and again, these are typically going to be smaller, bushier plants. They do, in a way, when you look at them, somewhat take on the same appearance as a stem plant, but they typically will sort of send out some runners that will grow out from the main plant and will spread along that way. They do also, of course, grow up like this. And one of the tricks in making a carpeting plant carpet, which I will cover in depth in another video, is getting this vertical growth to become horizontal growth and to creep out and to cover your substrate and to carpet it, to fill it out. Along with that is, again, your grass plants. Because again, they'll send out little runners either above or under the substrate and form up new plants as they go along. This set of grasses here also can be considered not just specifically for your carpeting plants, but also something like your Valsinaria, which again typically can grow fairly high, and so a lot of times you have them as a background plant. And lastly, the other type of plant that I'm going to cover is going to be your rhizome-based plants. Rhizome-based plants are going to be your Java fir, your Bulbitis, Anubias, for example. Typically, a rhizome-based plant, for those of you who do not know, has one main sort of root or rhizome that your plants tend to grow up out of. Now, some of them will have slightly different structures than others. Some of them are a little bit more tight, small rhizomes, and some of them do tend to spread quite far, like in the type of Java fern. Definitely, that rhizome can definitely extend. Something like Anubias, the rhizome doesn't seem to get as thick and as long. Now, again, maybe that's just from experience from trimming them so often. I've never actually seen one overgrow into a really, sort of big, long piece when it comes to Anubias. I'll be honest, I don't know. Maybe it does. But at least for the sake of discussion, still falls under the category of rhizome plants. So again, with these sort of four basic types, I'm going to talk about just the basic trimming techniques to keep them healthy and possibly to propagate and to spread. Now, as basic as this sounds, obviously, I'm still going to at least let you know, in order to be trimming your plants, you need to have yourself a good pair of scissors. These just happen to be my scissors of preference. They're longer, so I can get down deep into some of the deeper tanks and only have to go, maybe elbow deep instead. You can get some a little bit longer. I do like the slight curve on these because it allows me to have a better angle. There are some that you can get that have quite a more severe angle to them, and we'll do this so again you can come down a little bit more straight into the tank and be trimming across. Different scissors can be spring-based, so they pop off, and those are good for your carpeting plants and everything. I happen to like these myself. These are my general all-purpose trimmers. I find they work really well. They keep their cut nice, good stainless steel. Good pair of scissors is very, very useful. When I'm getting into smaller areas, smaller corners, in tight scapes or something like that, or nano tanks, I will use a smaller pair of sewing scissors. Very, very sharp, very small, help you get in to those spots a little bit easier. But get yourself a good pair of scissors. Nice long ones again, I happen to prefer just because I can go a little bit deeper and I feel I have a little bit more control. It's just a personal preference though. So, I'm going to start off with stem plants. So again, we have our stem plants growing up out of our substrate. Now, a lot of times when we first get plants or first get into planted tanks, we get some basic stem plants and we plant them, and they start off a little bit smaller and they start coming up and they look really, the term is leggy, because they end up just, it's doing well. It's growing. It's coming up, heading towards the surface. It's putting out nice new leaves. It's filling out, and but then again, like I said, it looks fairly sparse as it's coming because they end up being spindly and looking. So, how to make them look your best again comes down to trimming. Some of the best techniques for trimming stem plants is literally going at the stem. Now, there's a few different opinions about how close to the substrate, how close to the top. Some people say only chop the top 2 inches off. I've never really had any problem deciding to cut deeper than that and to really trim off lots. They always seem to do well for me. Obviously, you want to make sure that you've got healthy growth down near the bottom, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute, so that wherever you're chopping, you're not just leaving behind like a dead-looking stem. But so let's just assume everything is growing well, you don't really have any problems or any issues, and so you want to start chopping these off for the main reason of getting them to spread out. And there's 2 things you can do when you're cutting these. It's going to help your stem plants to spread out and develop. So the first thing, literally taking your scissors, cut on a bit of a bias on the diagonal. This just, I'm not entirely sure as to the whole botanical reason why, but this seems to promote healthier regrowth when it's cut on the angle, especially if you're replanting your tops, which is something I'm coming to. So you pick a place that is just above the node. The node is the area where the leaf typically is branching out. So pick your area just above the node and lop it off. Now, once you've cut this, you've got these spare bits up the top. Now, you can take those spare bits that you've just cut off the top and take these and replant them. Now, before you replant them, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take off the bottom leaves that were coming out of the nodes up there, and this is just to allow a little bit more stem to go deep. These leaves are just going to rot underneath your substrate anyways, and just cause more detritus to build up in your substrate, and not necessarily in a useful way. So you're going to end up throwing off your parameters a little bit. So it's best if you just trim those off and plunk them down, and now all of a sudden, you've doubled your plant volume, and these are able to grow up quicker. Now, once you've done that, with most stem plants, something really cool happens that also allows further propagation and bushiness of your plants to occur. What happens is the plants typically from the stem, not in all cases, not all the time, but they'll bifurcate, they'll split. So where you've cut from the top here, in most cases, it will branch out and it will start forming 2 shoots from each of those places that you have cut. Now, right away, you're going to see that's going to start making your plant look more dense, because coming from the one main, you've now got 2 branched stems coming off, and that allows it to fill in a little bit more. And likewise, as these tops that you've planted from off that, as they grow up, you can trim them as well, and they will start to branch out, and then you're going to start to see that bushiness, and you can start filling out your substrate by slowly planting more and more forward, or off to the side, to create that sort of full voluminous space that you want. Now, choosing how to do this and when to do this all depends on what your final appearance is that you'd like to grow, because obviously if you want your main plant to occupy a space like this, or your stem plants to occupy a space like this in your tank, you're going to want it to bush out and to bifurcate lower than this. So if you keep trimming off at this very top point, right off the start, all you're going to end up with is just single stemmy plants coming up to the top, you know, and you'll have your tops that you've planted down here, and it's just going to look like a stand of singles rather than that bushy look. Typically, the best thing to do, if you want this to be sort of the perimeter of the top of your bush as you're doing it, choose a point halfway down or even a little bit lower if you really want to bush it out, to continue to cut off, because then it will start to bush out from the top. Now this is of course assuming that you've got stem plants typically in the background, so you'll have other plants to sort of fill in some of this single stem root space underneath, or some of your hardscape. Now if you don't happen to do that, then cutting your plants in varying lengths, so longer in the back, and as you get a little bit closer to the front, a bit shorter, a bit shorter, a bit shorter, and allowing these to branch out and to fill off, will give you that voluminous look that you're looking in the case where something might not be blocking the front. Now the great thing about stem plants is, as well, when you're doing this, as you're trimming and they're forking off, you can go one step further and take some of these side shoots and trim these off again. And if your plant is growing really well and is nice and healthy, it will fork off again from these points. So you'll have even more growth. And similarly, you can keep going, picking out your individual stems and cutting and splitting and cutting and splitting. Now, if your plant is growing really healthy, this works wonderfully. It is much more time consuming, of course, because you literally you're not just going in and hacking off a hedge, you're going in and picking individual stems to choose to create your look. Now, if you're taking the time and the maintenance, you can come up with some amazing, beautifully thick results, you know, and it fills in rather quickly, because again, stems, they grow fast. Like, if your parameters are all set, it's not unusual to see, you know, an inch growth sometimes in a day or two. You know, it's not that way in all cases, but it's not unheard of. So if you're following this technique to allow it to bloom out and to split off and to become big, in no time you're going to have a nice dense bush of whatever your plant of choice is. Now, one of the pluses of this, as I said, is you're getting this nice dense top. However, that also means that light penetration coming down is going to be blocked by this new dense growth, and you can end up having stems that end up being bare and losing their leaves because all the energy is being put up to here. Now, if you let this go for too long, these stems will eventually sort of start to weaken and die, and this is when you can start to see sort of full plant melt or disintegration, just because it's pushed all its energy up here to propagating into filling out, and the stem, where it's connected to your substrate, where the root base is, it's just no longer getting all of the lights that it needs, and it cannot support it. So when you start getting to that point, one of the things that I highly recommend, and is quite useful to do, instead of necessarily trimming off the tops and just replanting the tops expecting more growth to come out, because once all of the leaves have come off of those bottom stems, they're pretty much done. It's very rare that you're going to see any more new growth come out of those. You're more likely to start to see, you know, decay and melt happen. So to keep your plant nice and healthy is you lop it off again here, and so all of this dying or bare stem, you just pull them right out of your tank altogether and replant this plant base back down into your substrate, so you still have that nice bushy plant, and it will again start with new primary stems and grow itself back up. Now, I admit I'm one of these people too. When I do that, sometimes like, oh, you know, I've got this nice plant and now I'm cutting it off. you know, and I sometimes hate that feeling, but you know, it's all part of the process. We have to do this to keep our plants healthy. You know, if we want to keep our tanks looking beautiful, not overgrown and not getting stemmy and gross and sort of past its point of maturation, but keeping that scape that we've manicured for months at a time, if we want to keep that looking its best longest, sometimes you have to do just hack it back, you know, cut out all that dead and bring it down. It's going to grow back. That's the whole point. And your plants will thank you for it, and your scape will last longer, and you'll be able to enjoy your hard work for a much longer period. And a lot of times, if you look at say any of the Amano seminars where they're doing pruning, or even, you know, any of the professional aquascapers, you'll see some of the progression tanks where, you know, it's growing, the plants are coming up, and they'll just hack them right back. And that's really just to promote that lushness, because you'll see as they grow in, it's just so much more voluminous and just robust growth, and it looks spectacular. And again, this technique works in low tech, in high tech. Obviously in high tech there you are adding a few extra growth parameters, usually in terms of CO2, that's going to boost that growth, you know, but in a low tech tank you're still going to be seeing that slow, healthy growth, and it will still bifurcate like that and will still fill up. It's just going to take a little bit more time to get that richness, but it's not unattainable in a low tech tank. That nice, big, robust growth is perfectly attainable as long as you're practicing the proper trimming habits.